Welcome back, everybody. If you would please find your seats, we're going to start with our surprise keynote presentation for this evening. And again, Sean apologizes very much for not being here. He was very excited about coming to the conference, so much so that he invited about half a dozen of his friends to come and join him. And we're going to put one of them to work here in a minute. And one interesting thing is if you notice their name tags, okay? The guy that is going to be introduced here in a second has Lou Elizondo's name tag on. Okay. Now, the reason that Lou Elizondo has a name tag is he was going to be a surprise guest. Now, he still can't speak because he's waiting for his book deal contract to come to fruition, so he still can't speak, hopefully next year. But Sean had played up our conference so much from last year that Lou says, well, I just want to come and just hang out. So I was going to be a surprise guest. But he had minor surgery just this last week, was not able to reschedule that, and so we have his name tag here. Right.
So I know a lot of what I can share that isn't anything classified because I've never held a security clearance. And no NDAs. I just came into this topic a few years ago from ancient history and physics hobbies and things.
Okay. Let me have Shannon bring you up so that you can tell the story.
Introduce me.
Shannon, our next speaker is actually going to be introduced by one of his friends and Sean's friends named Shannon Scott. Shannon, come on up. He knows him better than I do.
Thank you, everybody. This is my first UFO conference, believe it or not. I flew from Jacksonville, Florida, just to hang out with possibly Lou and just hang out with Rob. So I quickly, while Nick Pope was up here, I quickly wrote this introduction to Rob. First of all, my name is Shannon Scott. Rob and I have a YouTube channel called Military Witnesses to UAP. We don't do many broadcasts anymore because of health issues. Unfortunately, our good friend Sean, as you just heard, was unable to attend this year's event, and Rob was very honored to take his slot today. Rob is a U.S. Marine. He has a background in engineering. For the past 10 months, Rob has been investigating a cabal of skeptics on Wikipedia called Guerilla Skeptics and how this relates to the ongoing disinformation. It truly is my honor to introduce my best friend. Please welcome Rob Heatherly.
Bright lights. Have any of you been keeping up with UFO Twitter and the Wikipedia problem where they are essentially cooking the books? So to where anything on the UFO topic, among several topics actually, what I found out in the last 10 months is that this goes back about 20 years on Wikipedia, almost to the inception of it. So about 2003 and 4 is when they really started kicking in, where there's a parent company called the Committee for Inquiry. They are secular humanists and anti-theists. They take an aggressive stance globally to push their anti-theist agendas. There's no supernatural, no aliens to them, and they have a scientism that they adhere to. And Wikipedia is their number one tool to get their message globally. The pages that they control are about 5,500. And it's by majority rule. You're not supposed to have any assistance on Wikipedia. It's supposed to be individuals. Well, they have a monopoly, and it's been sanctioned by Jimmy Wales. So the people that lead Wikipedia are aware of this group, and probably there's more, but these are the ones that I identified because they're in the UFO topic, they're in homeopathy, all religions. They don't believe in any of it. And what they're doing for the last 20 years, they've been systematically, through their CFI and CSI organization, Committee for Skeptical Inquiry, they have fellows, which there's Neil deGrasse Tyson, Bill Nye, Mick West, who we'll get to in a minute, that they write papers in mainstream media and publish, and then most of them have anonymous usernames in Wikipedia, but I pretty much identified the core group of them. What they'll do is they go by what is the most mainstream consensus of any topic. So if they want to state that UFOs don't exist and it's all bunk, then they produce articles to their CFI to then post and use as reference material in these articles on Wikipedia. So there's a lot of topics, but for today, because this is a UFO conference, we'll focus on that. Anything on Wikipedia to do with UFOs, if it has any prominence whatsoever, this group controls those pages. Hands down, I can prove it. Look at my Twitter profile, Rob Heatherly. It's Rob Heatherly 1. And you can go down through the history and just put in Wikipedia in the search. And I've supplied links to scores and scores of pages now to prove that they have systematically gone through for 20 years now. And where there's all kinds of sightings pages of, somebody had a UFO encounter. If they're not being tended to and watched, they have been systematically deleting these pages. And they go in and are putting in the most mundane terminologies that they can to distill it down to where it's all balloons, air trash, and mass psychosis. And Havana Syndrome right now is one of the hot ones that they're attacking and controlling the page on Wikipedia. So they have over 2,500 pages, and as of January, they've had over 150 million page views on their pages. That's how much influence this group has. It is a major deal. We've even it's in the spirit of what they have with Susan Go, the Pentagon's PSYOP spokesman, who's been a very ardent gatekeeper with this, of trying to get information out since Lou went public in 2017. So they've controlled the narrative spanning back to at least 2003. So you can go in there and see that everything is claims now instead of stated, even with David Grush. And that's what got me started last year. I know Elizondo well. I've been introduced to a few people that run in his orbit, and I won't name names, but I was monitoring David Grush's Wikipedia page. And on Twitter, I noticed that some new people were coming in there, and they had the same negative talking points. And I realized that this had to have been coming from a single source somewhere. So I went looking for that source, and I found it in Wikipedia. When I started reading the talk pages, it became quickly apparent that, and I'm still working on the evidence for this to be overwhelming, but for all appearances, it looks like the head of the UFO disinformation campaign is titled Lucky Louie, but I'm convinced it's Mick West. I'm still compiling the information to prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt. So, I can't state it as fact, but anyone that knows his talking points and reads his comments and things, it's a no-brainer. So people like Lou Elizondo, David Grush, Ross Coulthart, George Knapp, anyone that has any prominence in the UFO field, they have gone in and they keep putting in negative edits for them. So they'll keep taking out anything that's positive. Like for Ross Coulthart, he had 5 prestigious awards, in his journalistic career. But they went in and took most of those out and said that he, received some awards. So that's how they systematically do it, from one paragraph down to like maybe a sentence. But then they gave him the Pegasus Award for wasting money because, as we all know, UFOs don't exist, and neither do, non-human intelligences. If they do exist, they live way out there, and none of them would be here in backwaters, in our solar system, is what they believe. So, and they're kind of like a special interest group. I think some of them may actually believe, but they will never admit it. It goes against their scientism. So if any of you that use Wikipedia to try and get cliff notes on who people are that are involved with this, or to look up the science of it, the physics, like Havana Syndrome that's tied into this with psychogenic weaponry and things, you're not getting the whole picture, because they are extremely biased. And when they state something as pseudoscience, which UFO topic is bunk, right? So they don't have to have neutrality with those articles. if they see him as bunk, and like David Grush was the biggest threat to him that they've ever had, they feel it was their duty on Wikipedia to give as much negative offset to discount him as possible. So as much as we're trying to get Congress on board and academics and scientists to buy into this and help us figure out what we're dealing with here, they even use Wikipedia as cliff notes to get a quick idea of who or what they're dealing with, and it's not accurate. They're not balanced. They're putting in as much negativity as they can. So all of our efforts where we're trying to educate members of Congress and hold hearings and such, they're undermining our efforts. They've been doing this for over 20 years now. And before my research, there have been many articles on this, even written by the other co-founder, Larry Sanger, who wrote 3 successive articles in the last 3 years that states that Wikipedia is tremendously biased and not accurate because of that bias. On uncontested pages, you probably can get accurate information. But on any topic that they control, whether it's UFOs, homeopathy, even chiropractic is out. I mean, that's bunk to them. They attack chiropractors. If a chiropractor becomes prominent in this field, then they systematically go after him on the Wikipedia page. If they favor one drug manufacturer, then they'll go down and they'll start dialing down the other. They're even in our politics now, I found. Some of the senior admins that are with the Guerrilla Skeptics and the unacknowledged Guerrilla Skeptics, they all are under the banner of CSI, Committee for Skeptical Inquiry. They're all, a lot of them are fellows or affiliated with them. So that's the cluster of where you can find out where they're centralized. But all of our efforts of trying to educate, and like I point out to Lou and them with Congress and the UAP caucus that we have in Congress, they're aware of this problem now. So what we're needing to do is educate the public that Wikipedia isn't balanced, it's not accurate, especially on this topic, and that's what we're focusing on today. We are being systematically undermined because we've got, like the Soul Conference, it was a one-off event. So we have these one-offs, like with David and the hearings and things like that, but they are statically in all of our minds, our eyes, our ears. Anytime we try and have a conversation with people when we're trying to educate them on this topic, they want to go and verify. They can look at Wikipedia and say, this doesn't look so good. Then they go and find the articles on CSI and stuff. Well, they're saying it here too, so I got 2 independent sources, right? Well, no, they're the same people. And what I found out is that there was a lot of people that are famous that have always had Wikipedia problems over the years, and there's no good way to remedy that for living persons to fix their biographies. They're not allowed to edit it. So what we found out is that, let me wrap my head around this here. Everyone thought that these were that they were decentralized. These were one-off events. Somebody had a grudge, whatever. No, some of that, yes, but for the major part, this is a organized, very large group of at least 150 people that have senior admin powers on Wikipedia, and they were allowed to have a monopoly, which is, you call it canvassing. You can't even have an editor to come to a page, and each page is ruled by majority rule. So if you want to get an editor that's in the same mindset as you and you want to put something into the article, if they contest it, they'll edit it back out. If you try to put it in 3 times, then they will ban you from the platform. They don't bother telling people that's how they eliminate their competition. So what, in a nutshell, what I figured out is that if we don't educate the public that Wikipedia has an activist, they are an activist organization, that they are undermining all of our efforts trying to build a base platform for normal society here, of people that have never heard of the topic, they don't have time, it's not in their worldview, and that's fine. But they can't get an honest opinion trying to go to Wikipedia, and the problem is the Google algorithms push it to the top of the search. And another disturbing aspect to this I found out just a few days ago is that with AI, they are training them to draw most of their data out of Wikipedia, which is extremely disturbing because this group monopolizes it. So when we're trying to train our AI up, it is drawing from these skeptics, the same group. So, they have infused most of our media, and this is global. This isn't just the United States. They've got 26 different languages now that they're pushing into. And I've done 2 interviews with the German reporter that has been the #1 attacked guy in Germany because he dared speak up against the skeptics, because each country that has prominence, they take it over. It's majority rule. And the rules of Wikipedia, you're not allowed to canvass. You're not allowed to get another editor to help you out on trying to get majority on a page. But they have executive control to do that. So if you come in and try and edit a page, which we had some people on Twitter first year, there was a prominent professor. And I tell people, don't believe me, go check my work. I put the links in there, I explain it, I have screenshots, and you can go in and see how these editors systematically do this. Just like with Havana Center right now. They've completely taken out the 60 Minutes segment that came out last month where they found a Soviet with the handheld device to cause some of the symptoms. They've completely taken that back out of the article. They won't have it. They basically own whatever pages they desire to take over. And like I said, there's over 5,500 pages now under their control of Project Skepticism. So they're well organized, they're well funded. The CFI parent organization gets about $5 to $7 million a year in donations that they disperse globally for journalistic articles, which I hear the going rate is about $1,500 for a skeptical inquiry article. They pay their bloggers, which means that they have presence in social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. So it's not just isolated to Wikipedia. Their agendas are being pushed systematically through many of these different organizations. And I've got a team that's evolving. We've got spreadsheets, and they're building a web page just now so people can go get information on this in one single source to educate themselves on it. But if we can't get Wikipedia to change, and they've had arbitration on this group before. The only way to resolve this is to stop canvassing, probably have to remove them from the platform, and if they don't, then we're going to have to look into their 501 status on CFI and for Wikipedia to see if they would lose their nonprofit status, because they are also a political activist organization by their actions of what they're doing. They are going in and editing in political, and I'm not trying to speak for any of the candidates for the presidency, so don't get this wrong, but say like with Trump, they're putting in the Russia collusion hoax again, and things like that. So they're having an effect on our next election too. Not just Trump, but anyone, also Kennedy, they're attacking him. So anything that they comes into their purview, they don't accept. They have absolute control over, because YouTube is now pushing Wikipedia as a source. So if you go and watch a video, say, with alien abduction, it's going to have a Wikipedia entry there where you can click on it to go get information. And it's the same group of skeptics. You're going to get their opinion. You're not getting a fair and balanced one. They will take out any positive edits, say there's equal information but opposing. They won't allow the opposite information to be edited into an article and allow you to make up your mind on what's accurate or not. They don't think that we are capable of doing that, because if you believe in God, or if you believe in aliens, if you believe in ghosts, then you're credulous and not capable of thinking for yourselves. They do that for you, because you can't make educated decisions on your own. That is flat out what they do. Mick West does it off of Wikipedia. Lucky Lee does it on Wikipedia. And any reasonable person that's spent any time listening or reading his materials, it's not so much in the articles, but if you read the talk pages off the articles, that's where the action is. And they archive a lot of these, so it's kind of hidden. But we're creating a website for people to get this in a nutshell. They don't have to reinvent the wheel of trying to learn everything that I have. Basically, what we need to know is it's not a fair and balanced platform. You're not going to get accurate information. Like, for instance, David Grush is the most best example of this. There's They put everything in there negative that they could. Most of the article, about 2/3 of it to 3/4, is negative articles against him and against everything he spoke on. So they're completely trying to discount him, and by virtue, any forward momentum that we have is being hamstrung by this group. So if we can't change them, we've got to at least educate people, in the United States or any country that they're prominent in, that this is not accurate information. It needs a warning label with it. And I think we're going to push Congress to see if there's something we can do to get that facilitated, to educate people, and maybe have to hold a hearing on it. And because if we can't change Title 230, which gives them protections because they're a social media platform, but the difference is they're aware of the guerrilla skeptics. They gave the authority and permission for them to exist because they feel like they are taking care of their platform and looking after their best interests. But they are disparaging, and they call them BLP, biographies of living persons. The living persons that are under the purview of UFOs are being systematically denigrated, insulted. It's awful. The things that they've said about Ross Coulthart, George Knapp, Bigelow, all of them, they're not immune. They've all had their pages dialed down. Even Gary Nolan, they're afraid of him, and they should be, but they've even kind of thrown a little bit of gray on his profile too, to where they just systematically reduce this to where, for most people that take a glance at it, and they know the first two sentences are the most important to any page article. So they get their most disparaging information into the first two pages, the first two sentences. So anything on the UFO topic, take a look at Wikipedia, look at the first two sentences, and it's going to be derogatory. It's always going to say claims and completely water down anything that's factual. It's going to be dialed down to where it's going to cause people to question, if this ever existed, and that's their point. They're trying to erase all history of this. And moving forward, even now, they're in real time undermining by their efforts. They've had 20 years to perfect this, and I dare say Susan Go, the Pentagon spokesman, she spent 20 years as a colonel doing PSYOPs. So she wrote a paper in 2003, and it's on my website. It'll be in the website, but it's also on my Twitter page you can find, where she was arguing that we needed a domestic information control system, which Wikipedia, if she were going to get her dream list of how to facilitate that, this is what it would look like. Very interesting for me, and I'm still researching that aspect of it, because at least it's in the spirit of PSYOPs on controlling the narrative with this, that there's nothing here, it's all mundane, which, I don't know how many people here believe the phenomena is real, but something's going on, and it didn't just start at Roswell. It started a very long time ago. Part of what I do is ancient history research, paleocontact, language isolates, and with engineering, I was able to see how megaliths have power tool marks on them. That's what got me hooked about 10 years ago, is realizing that the trilithon stones in Baalbek, they're on average 1,000 tons each. They're sitting on a course of 400-ton blocks, and the bottom of the trilithon stones is 40 feet in the air, on a course of 400-ton stones that are about 20, 30 feet in the air. And some of those were moved over 500 miles. There's no roads to get them in there. There's no roads for the Great Pyramid. So they couldn't have taken them over land. And it's absurd to think that they built them with hand tools. The Egyptians did a lot of great things, but when you're a machinist and you've worked with power tools and building houses, I've built restored vehicles, I've been a machinist, I've been a draftsman, so I've been on all sides of this. I know what needs to take place to build something like the Great Pyramid. We don't have the technology today to build it. My friend Ben with Uncharted X, he had 6 bases scanned last year that were from underneath the Great Pyramid of Djoser that are pre-dynastic. They have a tolerance that are held for 10,000 points of data checking. It's holding a tolerance of 1/10,000th of an inch. So they were terminal late. There's no way around it to argue that. And they open source the files. So You can go in and if you know anything about AutoCAD or anything like that, you can take a look at these files for yourself or have somebody that knows how to operate CAD. They can confirm the work that these are indeed accurate to that tolerance, which cannot be done by hand. We can't do it now. They've got handles on them, and they're turned by lathe, but they're down to 1/10,000th perfection, the whole vase, inside and out. So that, to me, was the best evidence that I can bring forward to people to prove that the megaliths were not built by hand. There's at least 4 epochs of megaliths, according to the style of block. In Italy, there's, I think, a star fort that has each style of block built one on top of another. You could start with a cyclopean, polygonal, complex polygonal, Herodian ashlar. So you can see the successions of times that go through there, which probably was spanning 50 to 80,000 years, is what they speculate. So we've got the evidence with the vases to prove that there was power tools in antiquity. So why wouldn't they still be here using that same kind of technology today? So that's where we're at with trying to prove, bring forward facts for people, because some of them, they call them overcuts. There's a giant box inside the Cairo Museum. It's been overcut by about 1.5 feet into it. It had dual saw blades, and one of them broke. So you can see where it just cut in with high-powered saws into them. So the evidence of paleo contact in antiquity is there. So why would they not still be here now? They exhibited anti-gravity technologies. They were able to temporarily soften stone without vitrification, which means that they're probably like a Bose-Einstein condensate. They're moving the electrons around, but the structural integrity, say like passing through walls, they can float their electrons, and this is just speculation at this point, but they're able to pass through other matter without touching it and keep their structural integrity. And they're able to do that with stone too, where they can soften it to be able to shape it and sculpt it easier. They've got high complex alloys, because there's a German research team of scientists that took metal samples out of a few different temple saw cuts, and they come up with some really very complex alloys that they're not natural. There's just no way they can be naturally made. And they also found a different type on Baalbek that had bismuth in it, which some of you might know what that buzzword is because of the metamaterials that they have. So, and they also had a small density of microspherules on it, which indicated heat, like a low-yield nuclear device, or comparative to that kind of heat yield. And they have a 36-foot saw cut, a circular saw cut with it. So the evidence is there. They keep saying that there's no evidence. There's no evidence. There is. They just keep burying it and mudding the waters, and that was the whole premise of why I'm talking about Wikipedia. No matter how much we try and educate people on this topic and legitimize it to bring more scientists, more academics into the field, and try and break through that 75-year stigma that they institutionalized, it's all for naught if we don't get a grip on Wikipedia, because it's the number one, bar none, tool of reference material in existence right now on the internet. So anywhere in the world, if somebody wants to look up this topic, they're going to get the skeptic's viewpoint of it, not what's actually there. And like with Havana syndrome, there are people that are suffering real effects from that have been disabled, that have served our country admirably, and they are being told they have mass psychogenic psychosis. That's it. They won't allow anything else into the Wikipedia article. They've completely taken out anything that would indicate any kind of psychotronic weapons of any sort. So this isn't just the UAP topic or UFO. They're having real-world damage attacking different types of alternative medicine, and when they go after people with Havana syndrome, you get congressmen or staffers that look at that. They're going to see it and say, oh, hell, it's all psychogenic. This expert said that. Well, that expert that they've put in there, Bartholomew, he's also a skeptic in Australia. So their expert is also a CSI fellow. So you see where I'm going with this? That it's a huge disinformation campaign, and we're pushing an uphill battle. I've been at this full throttle for 5 months now, trying to get it down on paper to where it's coherent enough to present to Congress and some very very skilled lawyers. Let's just put it that way. We've got a few different demographics. We're reaching out to different colleges, people like Gary Nolan. He's not directly involved with this, but he's aware of it. But there was a scientist that sat on the board of directors for the U.S. government that investigated Havana syndrome. And I think he was one of the editors that was trying to edit the Havana syndrome article, and he got banned because he didn't have enough edit count. Basically, he went against the skeptics. And this is the guy that is the premier expert in the United States in our intelligence community that had the clearance, knows exactly what's taking place, and he was kicked off the page and off of Wikipedia because he dared to put in the truth. He tried to edit in exactly what's going on with the data to prove it, to back it up. And they edited it back out, and they banned him from being an editor. So I'm going to reach out to that person. He's a professor in Los Angeles, and let him know that this wasn't just a one-off attack and a bad pull of the straw. This is a coordinated effort that he systematically took him out and his talking points and is affecting the people that served our country admirably that are suffering with Havana syndrome. They are being delegitimized directly because of what these skeptics are doing. So it's not a trivial matter. We're trying to figure out why the phenomena, since we kicked off the atomic bomb, why they keep becoming more and more prominent in our worldview, and what is the end game here? I don't think we're dealing with any one type of phenomena that, from all indications, like what David said and several others, we're dealing with multiple different type others with differing agendas and different levels of capability. There are other humans, apparently, like us, or earlier us and maybe later us both. We don't know exactly. But like David said, there's 5 different species that they've got on ice, the United States, that they've got intact craft, they've got wrecked craft. So what David said, you can take it to the bank, that will come out at some point. Everything he said, and he had access to over 2,000 SAPs, and he had 3 different titles of authority, so he could interrogate even like DOE, I believe. So he wasn't denied any access to investigate to ensure what his talking points were accurate. It wasn't just the people from Skinwalker Ranch, like Wikipedia and their CSI fellows keep pounding home, is that it's the same group of grifters of Bigelow and George Knapp and all them. No, that's not the case. David didn't get groomed, as they like to say, by them. The guy's a literal genius. He went through systematically for 4 years and was able to call people into skiff rooms and interrogate him even. He had that authority. He did the president's daily intelligence briefings. So, he's not just a low-level operator that was sitting there in the geospatial looking at satellite images. He was senior director, whatever you want to call it, over the programs. So this guy had mad skills, and he was only 34 years old. What happened was when they found the unauthorized SAP program, and they tried to get access to it, and I think this was like mid-2021 in that area, that winter time, they were denied access, so they turned in a complaint to the DOD IG in 2021, I think in April or so. It was a little bit before that. And then that's where the death threats against Lou came out. That was in the news. Burchett was on the news saying he had to back off for a little bit because they found a group that they didn't know existed, but they're extremely powerful. And the Congress members that were pushing for access, they were told to back off some because you're dealing with aerospace contractors that are outside of the FOIA process, outside of government regulations, by the way it was set up. So the threats came from private aerospace, and they're trying to control the narrative. His DOD IG complaint got leaked. So all the names of the people that were pushing, and from what I understand it, a lot of the 40 witnesses that he talks about, a lot of them either work or have worked within the retrieval program. So when they found out that the program's killing people, innocent civilians, to keep it secret and things, and that they don't actually have the authority, at least that we know of, to exist and be taking government monies, they're not, as presently an unacknowledged SAP group. So they tried to get access to that. They were denied. And then whoever was on that DOD complaint, they're all outed and exposed. And some of them, I'm sure, worked in the program. And, their lives and their families' lives are at stake from that. So then they had to file a complaint with the ICIG from the death threats, and then the unethical, what do you call it, administrative terrorism. So he was trying to get remedy through that and they were trying to take their clearances away. They were trying to make it to where they couldn't ever work again. The people in the Pentagon, because as we all know, the government and the DOD and the IC are not monoliths. They have many compartments and many factions. So, it's like the Air Force. They've been completely obstinate in not being forthcoming with information, despite, starting in 19 when Rubio first formed the UAP task force that came out of ATIP in 2017. And I know Wikipedia states that ATIP was ended in 2012 and Lou had no assigned duties. Bullshit, excuse my French. But this is the kind of propaganda that they publish and that all of us are deluged with because, like I said, David and them can come out and speak, one-off, like Soul Conference and all that. They're not statically there day in, day out persistently for a source of information. That's the problem, is that we need some kind of solution that is not going to be Wikipedia for a centralized place to get accurate information to both sides of it, because we do need skeptics and actual skeptics, because it's important to make sure that we're not being credulous in trying to play to what we want to see out of the results in our inquiries and investigations. We need somebody that's going to be, a voice of reason to call us on it, and why do we know what we do? Which is a great service for me, even like on ancient history. Well, how do you know that? Well, then I go back and look at my first sources to make sure that I have it accurate, which is a good process. Iron sharpens iron. So if they're teachable, then that's a good thing. We can have a dialogue. But this group are unteachable. They have an agenda. They're weaving it. They're trying to diminish this process, just like in the spirit of the DOD that doesn't want disclosure. They are trying to hinder that. And whether it's just coincidence that they're on the same path as the DOD and what PsyOps and Susan was admonishing for. Actually, in 2010, she had a program in 2009 and 10 with Stephen Greenstreet to produce he was the head of the propaganda films, believe it or not, and also to create social media accounts to push their overseas dogma on making the U.S. look beautiful and whatever that they wanted to control the narrative of. But members of Congress were afraid that was going to come back home, so they closed down the program. Well, then 2012, they passed the law where it was legal to push propaganda into the United States now. So surprise, it's legal. We didn't know that. Just until recently that we were looking at the laws and realized that, oh crap, they actually did reinstall laws to do this on the down low in 2012, which all this documentation I can provide. So everything I'm saying here, you can call me on it. I can provide, me or my team can provide you the information that you can follow up with. But the main point I'm trying to make is that we have our forward momentum is being hamstrung significantly by this group. We at least need to educate the public, and it may take a congressional hearing to do it, to get enough exposure and get like News Nation and others to step up and get the news out there, because you guys didn't show up here just for entertainment. You're probably most of you looking for answers, like I am, like my friends are. And we have to have accurate information to do that. We can't just, we can't trust people's words, obviously. But there again, this group claims that pilots are not accurate for giving accurate information. So their testimony is null, according to them. These are the people that can identify the silhouette of an aircraft from the horizon line, a shadow of it, and tell you what kind of plane it is, what range it is, and the speed. So them trying to say that pilot testimony is inadmissible is BS. But that's the game they've been playing, and they've been at it for 20 years now. We're behind the 8 ball. And I've been spending most of my time the last 6 months, my wife's about ready to divorce me, trying to quantify this and figure out how big of an organization they are and what can we do about it. So at the least, public education to know that it's a biased platform and does not provide accurate information on anything that's meaningful or anything that's contested, contentious topics. They even have labels that they put on them. So if editors try to go to a page and there's been something in the news brought up about it recently and it's drawing some attention, they'll go right to that page and make sure that it promotes the skeptical mindset and their agendas. That's what they do. So we've got a huge disinformation organization that's been running for 20 years now. They're well-funded. They're well-organized. Some of them are well-educated. But that's what we're up against. And we need to get Congress and major academics to speak out on this to bring public awareness, because we're not going to get accurate information if we don't turn this around, or at least find other sources and stop using Wikipedia. And that's what we need to do, is find alternate sources. And if they have CSI in them, this skeptical organization, you're not going to get a fair assessment of what's going on. You're just not. I mean, I can provide all kinds of literature on this and evidence. I've compiled God knows how many files now of information. I can prove everything I'm saying. Even down to I can provide the evidence, and most people would agree. Luckily, it's either Mick West's doppelganger or it is him. But I'm working on proving that. He wants, extraordinary evidence for extraordinary claims. Well, I'm going to give him that. By the time I come out with my evidence that he's Mick West, it's going to be overwhelming. So I'm not going to leave it to chance. I'm not going to leave it to disambiguation. I'm going to prove it. But Gary Nolan told me that, when I first started, it was about figuring out who Lucky Louie was and exposing him to get that out, so I could try and get this disinformation campaign turned around. But then early into it, Gary was nice enough to share with me that the bigger picture, what's most important is the holistic of what they're doing, how they are completely they're continuing the efforts that the Air Force did of the 75-year disinformation campaign. He told me we have to quantify it to understand the nature of the organization, the scope of them, and what can be done about it. And that is where most of my focus has gone to, because proving identity of one person, fine, that'd be great, but it's not going to take care of the problem, not entirely. We're still in the process of building a website. We're getting some members of Congress spun up. We've got some high-level academics. I'm going to reach out to the people that are in the Havana program, because this isn't just about UFOs. This is about mainstream topics. It's in our politics. They are controlling the narrative on anything they choose, and that's scary. I mean, my disabilities were from a chemical that Medtronic paid their doctors in clinical trials over $100 million in bribes to get the product to market and hide the side effects of it. And it nearly killed me in 2008 because of that. And the reason that they had congressional hearings is because it was so inflammatory and they used it in people's necks, they were dying on the operating table from the inflammation because they lied about their clinical trials. This is what these organizations do. They're special interest groups, and they're pay to play. They will go in and cook the books on, say, like Medtronic that had that product. There's no mention of this chemical in there whatsoever. It's one of their highest selling products that they own. It's a morphogenic bone protein that stimulates bone growth. It causes 5 times more the incidence of cancer, abnormal bone growth, and it's caustic to nerve tissue. So they are having real-world damage to people across the board. They do not let people decide for themselves what reality is and to interpret data. They've taken that away from us. I want us to have an educated opinion to make up our own minds. I think we're intelligent enough to do that. We don't need nihilist skeptics telling us what our reality consists of and what it doesn't because of their phobias and fears. And some of them are getting paid. So, we're fighting an uphill battle here, and I've had some very good talks with some people who have been in this for decades, and they have seen that disclosure to the government and the military and key people that have been influenced on both sides of disclosure. People that would be normally all in, like Gillibrand at first, that was all in, all of a sudden does an about face. Why? Abnormal behavior in key positions of science, politics, military, that made him question what motivated them to do what they did. It seems like they were suddenly influenced in a way that was outside the norms of what you would expect. Kind of like what we see on slide 9. Do most people know what slide 9 is? Where it was a To the Stars briefing card by Christopher Mellon that he wrote that wasn't supposed to go public, but it talks about executive human interface where the phenomenon can take over people. It can move backward and forward in time. It can infiltrate any kind of comms whatsoever. So basically, they have godlike powers where they can, like Jacques Vallée talked about, the systems within systems. They can present as anything your mind wants to perceive. But like the one craft that 3 people in a car saw through the sunroof, it looked like it was about 30 meters across, and they took pictures of it. They got home and looked at the picture, and it was only about 15 feet across in a star pattern instead. So the phenomena has the ability to project mass hallucinations into people's minds, and it can be completely custom tailored to the individual. I mean, all of you could see a different phenomenon up here. I could look entirely different to each and every one of you. They have that ability and that power to control through the quantum field, which is intertwined with our consciousness, evidently, and still delving into that. But I know I got into this about 4 years ago out of the ancient history community because some people in this field of UFOs wanted me to take a look at it because I have a knack for figuring things out and being able to find information and compile it, in a very efficient way that sometimes others don't quite. Anyway, I proved myself useful in doing research and then investigations both. So that's what drew me into UFOs. And when I found out that, in antiquity with the saw marks and things, that they had to have had anti-gravity to move what they did, because you can't move 1,500 ton statue 800 miles, across burning sand and reed boats. That's just no offense to the Egyptians, but that's just ludicrous to think that they could do that. There's no tools in their toolbox that would lend to how they built pyramids. They say that they had corundum. There's only one artifact ever found in Egypt that had a corundum slurry on it that's a Mohs hardness of 9. One artifact. That's not enough to say that they had it on an industrial scale throughout dynastic Egypt to build all the megalithic works with. That's just absurd. They didn't start getting corundum until about 200 BC or so. I think the Phoenicians started mining it in the Aegean. So our history is woefully incomplete, and just like the Smithsonian, there's the legends of how they keep socking away artifacts, like Indiana Jones with the help me out, son, the Ark of the Covenant. Thank you. But artifacts like that. I had a guy asking me today, well, if they had all this high technology back then before, this flood that I'm talking about, I can find evidence. I have evidence for that. I can prove that. Where did all these tools go? All the saws, there's not a broken saw blade. Well, if you have that kind of power, they're able to police their area pretty efficiently. And if you follow the ancient manuscripts, it's not just in the Book of Enoch. It's also in the Vedics. It's also echoed in Zoroastrianism. It's echoed in the Sumerian texts that there are wars among the gods, and they were living among humanity. That when they were taking at the ziggurats and feeding them and stuff every day with their wine and their meals and all this extravagance, they were literally living in there. They were dwelling as gods among humans, because if we were able to bug out right now and say there's an impact coming by 2036 that we're going to get hit, obviously they can't put everybody in boats and bug out or craft off the planet or deep into it like they did during Kuyu, that could house with the other different underground locations there in Turkey. They could house about 200,000 people with their livestock and their grains, and that makes you wonder why they started domesticating grains. And there's 4 different grains around the planet with different genetic sequences that did not, they were all They all showed up independently and are not related to each other. They do not interbreed. They're different domesticated grains, and it just, boom, here they are. And right before the Younger Dryas, which is about 12,800 years ago, when you had that 1,200-year hell on Earth of dripping back into the Ice Age, and the impacts melted the glaciers in the Arctic and caused some of the worst flooding ever known to man that Randall Carlson so eloquently highlights with the channeled scablands and such. That was probably the worst known flood that they've ever been able to find. It was 12,800 years ago, but the average is about every 2,000 to 3,000 years we enter an area that has a high probability of getting impacted. But the half cycles of the 25,920 year cycle precession, each 12,000 year interval puts us on a super highway where we have a very high chance of getting hit. And there's a lesser chance about every 3,000 years. So this 5,000 year run that we have now is the longest that they know of, that we haven't been literally set back to the Stone Age in over 100,000 years. And there's also a website that shows every impact, plague, volcanic eruption, earthquakes that took out regions or hemispheres or the entire planet was affected. So all the information is out there on this stuff, guys. And also an astronomer that logged in Sirius for like 20 years. His journals are there that shows that Sirius does not precess. That could only indicate that we are rotating around it. That it's the center of a local stellar group. So there's a lot of this information out there that is being hidden from people and hidden away. Because like my friend asked me a while ago, where are the machinery? Where are the tools? Why isn't there a broken saw blade? If you read the ancient manuscripts, they wanted to start humanity over, whether you want to buy into the religious theology or not. You can look at the essence of what took place. There were wars among the gods. They decided, there was an impact that came and almost annihilated humanity again. And then they wanted to be able to start unfettered to where they could evolve without outside interference. Because, we go like Eric Weinstein talks about, the North Sentinelese people in India, that is one of the last undisturbed tribes that we know of, that they are protected by India, that they don't even know what India is. They just know that there's other people out there and they need to stay off their island, and they kill anybody that comes onto it. Well, we don't interfere. As long as they're in their own element, we don't want to come in and give one side, firearms, and then boom, they're completely done, with disease and war and, cargo cults and such. And we don't want others coming down and doing that to humanity. So like what Lou had said, it's a gamble to educate the people that we're not alone and that there are others that live here on this planet likely. And that's not exclusive. That there probably are some that come from other places, other dimensions, or wherever. But it appears that there's at least some others that live here and call it home. And Jacques Vallée archived that well back to 1400 BC in one of his books. I think it's called Dimensions. But he archives paleo-contact in the ancient past. Diana Pasulka also with the Ecstasy of the Saints, where in the Middle Ages, it talks about little beings coming out and putting probes in one of the nuns' stomachs and things. So this isn't a new phenomena. It's just, it seems like it's echoing the collective consciousness of humanity of what we perceive is going to take place. It seems to morph into being our expectations collectively as a civilization, because it's different in Western civilizations as it is from Eastern. And with the miracle of Fatima, some saw craft, some saw the Virgin Mary. It depended on their perceptions and what their expectations were. And that's just one aspect of what we're dealing with that Jacques Vallée outlines, that are the systems and systems that seem like a thermostat that's been here probably longer than humanity. That's only one of the others that we're encountering from what the evidence shows, that there's other humans that earlier us and evidently old, from our future too. Is what they're talking about, as absurd as it sounds, but you have the senior defense minister from Israel and then the one in Canada that both come out and say we have Galactic Federation. 3 years ago, I would have told any of you that you're lunar and bat shit crazy, frankly. to tell me that there's a galactic federation and that things like Skinwalker could actually exist. I was ready to accept the nuts and bolts at Skinwalker, but on the Skinwalkers, no, that's just nuts. I'm not going there, but I did, and they're inseparable. So we're not dealing with one other out there. And with the angels and demons and the discarnate beings that are smokeless fire. With the Quran, it talks about them living like we do, but they're discarnate. They're like a cold plasma type beings or something. I don't understand it, but Elohim is just generic for beings that are not in the flesh. Period. Whether it's humans, ghosts, angels, demons, like they were talking about with interdimensional in the hearing. It's not one or the other. And Bigelow even stated that when he was asked if it was angels, demons, or discarnate, or archons, or other human beings, or other species entirely. Which is it? It's all the above. But it appears for the last 5,000 years we've been allowed to evolve as a civilization without the overt interference we had in the previous ages. And each time it happens, the evidence from our history shows it was not a good first contact. And I think there are concerns with the 2036 rumors and things that there could be some kind of high-value contact with that, but they don't know intentions. So if they're coming from out of town, so to speak, what are the ones that live here going to think about it? Which one's the bigger dog? If you go back to the three-body problem book, the number one book in China, which is really scary, where the book basically outlines where people, a person had made contact with a signal. They got a signal back from Alpha Centauri, which is 4.3 light years away right now. They got a signal back, and they were told, don't send again, or we'll come. Well, the woman was fed up with the Chinese regime, so she sends out the message, and then they are on their way, and they're bugs, like Tom DeLonge talks about, that they are hive-minded, and then found out that humans had the capacity to lie and such, so then they decided that we were bugs, and they're going to exterminate us. And that's what the book is about, is that they made contact with another species and thought that they could make a pact to where they wouldn't be decimated along with the rest of humanity. If you remember, David Grush talked about how our primary governments like the U.S., Russia, China, that they perhaps have cut deals with some form of the others at some point, and that like the craft that have been technically gifted when they're sitting open with the doors open, keys in ignition out in the desert in Southwest, just down in a plateau. How else do you quantify that? What does that mean? They're basically gifting us the technology because they didn't just get drunk and forgot where they parked their car. So, and I hear it all the time is, if they come all this way, why do they come to Earth and then crash? Well, we're not the only game in town. And, with these metal spheres that we see, it almost looks like there's an ancient AI system or something. And like with the Italian craft that were shot down in the early 30s, it wasn't the Italians that shot that down. There's nothing in the books about that. They just fell from the sky. And Stringfield, he articulated in some of his books where some of them had just like a pinhole-sized hole through the hull that for like 20 years they couldn't get inside some of these craft because they were so hard metal. But something had punctured it and took them out of the sky. So it's not us taking them down, and it's hard to overcome a super bolt of lightning too, because they seem to operate off vectors, a lot of them, in their warp fields. And I'm sure I'm messing up how to articulate it, and D'Antonio could do a lot better than I can, but they're not infallible. And also, like they said, if we send out probes to another planet and stuff, we don't care if it comes back. It does its job, and then we crash it into it and leave it. There's every indication that that's happened here too, that they've sent probes and that they've crashed. There's been archaeological digs where they've pulled craft out that could be hundreds of thousands of years old, if not millions. There's ancient artifacts. There's actually humans that were in coal seams mean, coal was only produced in like 250 million to 300 million years ago. So, what's that about? And then you get cart ruts that, like in Turkey, earthquakes offset them. And there was one that they knew about, it was 26 million years ago, was when that earthquake took place and offset the cart ruts. And there's only about 3 different size axle widths and tire widths around the planet that they're uniform. So our history goes way farther back than academia and the governments want to let us know. And I know this sounds completely heretical. You guys don't know me from Adam, but I didn't get to be friends with Lou in a vacuum of not knowing anything. And no, he's not a psyops agent. That's Susan Go. That's disinformation. Lou was counterintelligence. That means finding out what the enemy knows about us. So who better to task with trying to figure out what we're encountering than somebody that their whole skill set is wrapped around trying to ascertain what it is we're interacting with, what is it, how do they work, and what are their intentions. So, of all the different areas that David could have advanced on what the others are that day in his hearing, he decided to go with interdimensional. And everybody says that he wrecked the physics on that and stuff and didn't know what he's talking about. No, he did know what he's talking about. He just couldn't expand past his DOSPER cleared talking points. So that was as far as he was able to take it. And people wonder, well, if it was classified, why did he get this? He must be lying to be able to say all that because it was actually classified. How did he get to say it? Well, the guy's brilliant. I'll just state that again. And he has a wise counsel like Christopher Mellon and people like that that have been at this a while. Jim Simmervan, Lou Elizondo, the list goes on. I mean, it's not just Lou and the crew from OSAP. There's hundreds and hundreds of people in the intelligence communities that are wanting to bring this out to the forefront because I think some of them feel a sense of urgency that if we don't disclose on our dime, we're going to get that ontological shock if they show up and we don't even know they exist. How are we going to overcome that, first of all, to deal with the realization we're not alone? After all, they're here, and oh shit, what do we do? So we've at least got to be aware, like Carl Nell said in his slideshow presentations, that we are not alone, and it looks like we're going to get some company. Maybe. I don't know. That's just a rumor. All of this is ambiguous, like what Jacques Vallée states. This could be kabuki theater, because it's always half fact and half confusion of absurdity. And that's just the way he states it. Secondary evidence is overwhelming. We are not alone. And rational minds, when they look at the totality of that, understand this. But back here again, we're back to the disinformation campaign that's trying to keep this from us. And it appears that even the phenomena itself is in this struggle. Part of it wants disclosure out, part of it doesn't. Part of it couldn't care less about any of it. We've got everything in between, from benevolent to malevolent, and everything in between. And like with CE5, that is a very dangerous proposition, because I know some very high-profile people that their family thought it was a really cool thing because they're involved with, and they wanted to check out themselves. So on a back highway, they flash the lights and they get abducted. And some of them couldn't cope with it. You get suicide from that. This is a very real phenomenon. And the evidence is there if you want to look for it. You just have to cut through the noise of the disinformation. And it's very heavy right now, the smokescreen of it. And that's what I'm trying to do, is jailbreak people to understand that you cannot source out of Wikipedia. You cannot source out of people like Mick West. Their job is to muddy the waters of this and make it look all mundane. Flat out. He will never accept anything other than mundane, period. That's his job, literally. I've even got an article where he stated that this is what he does for a living. He says it's a hobby, but luckily you can go in and run the filter in Wikipedia, and it shows that he's been at this 20 years now, full-time, at least 8 to 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, sometimes on Saturday. So, like I said, it's extremely well organized, and they're not doing us any. They're really doing humanity a disservice, because whether it's going to be and I don't know if anything's going to take place, and I've not been told anything directly, so this isn't anything sensitive. It's just you hear a lot of things from different people. And when I hear it from enough independent sources, then I start to listen. And for all indications, it appears that that something was going to come in 2027, then 29, then they got moved to 2036. There's a few different things that could be. I mean, we've got a Pappas. If it hits a keyhole in 2029, it'll set it right up for hitting in 2036 and be just a really bad day for humanity. But we don't know. First of all, let me state, we don't know if anything's going to happen in 2036. I don't know that for sure. I've heard rumors that one or two things can take place, or both, that there will be a natural impactor, or that we're going to have first contact by a craft that's coming pretty fast. One or both, we don't know. But we also observed that with scalar technology and anti-gravity, like it appears they have, whoever they are, and there appears to be other humans that could, there could be one in our room. We wouldn't know it because they are us. We're them. We were just the castaways from the last impact, and we continued on starting over again, and they're still tooling away wherever they're at, living a good life. But such as it is, the rumors are something's going to take place by 2036, and if that's the case, we don't want to have ontological shock of others showing up, even if they're here to help protect the planet. It's still going to be kind of a really rude awakening to find out after all this disinformation campaign that we're not alone. We've never been alone. And what are their intentions? Are they going to stop a deproliferation of the nukes? Or are they going to take out the squadron of the nukes? Or are they going to take out the whole base? Or are they going to take out the military? We don't know. But they're advanced scouting, and from my background, it's called prepping the battlefield. Even if you're going to do a humanitarian purpose of going into a territory, you've got to be able to mitigate the reactions of the locals. They're not going to be happy like at North Sentinelese rolling in there with craft and stuff. They're going to fight back with deadly force. So you've got to be able to handle the locals to take care of it. And our nuclear stockpiles, even with our civilian spent fuel rods and all that are put here and there, and our all of our nuclear power plants, when we have another impact, we have no way to contain all that nuclear waste material. I mean, look what happened with Fukushima. That was just one reactor. It irradiated the whole Pacific, and it's still doing it. That's just one reactor. Imagine if we get hit with a hemispherical impact like Pappas in 2036. How much radiological material would that spill out? I mean, it could if it hit in the oceans and stuff, and we've got all these power plants so close to the sea and things, they're going to get knocked offline and compromised. So, with the Robert Hastings book, UFOs and Nukes, where he talks about how, these craft have been over all of our nuclear fields. And when I first heard about that, I thought, well, maybe it was just like maybe 10 missiles or something, or 1 or 2, 3 occurrences maybe at the most. When I started learning about that a few years ago, then I found out that Russia had incursions as well. And then when I read the UFOs and Nukes book, this is prolific across all different nuclear silo fields. They've been around all of our nuclear power plants. They've even outed bases in Europe that weren't supposed to have nukes, but they're around them, and exposed that there were nuclear materials stored on those sites. So they outed us there too. So they have a close interest at monitoring all of our nuclear assets, but they also monitor new tactics that roll out, new military hardware. They're there, watching all of this. What's their end game? We don't know. There's probably multiple end games taking place. And if you're, like the 1561 woodcut in Germany showed the battle in the sky for 3-4 hours. They can fight anywhere they want, any wind they want to. So, we just don't know what's going on around us. We've only got a very narrow spectrum of vision that we can see. And there's a whole environment, it seems like, out there that we are not tapped into. But like the Varginha incident, it seems like the alien that was picked up there, he felt sorry for us, that we didn't know what we are, that we're being held back from our true potential of what humans are meant to be, of our full, experience of being a human. Call it what you will, we're being suppressed, And that's why I think David came out with the interdimensional, is that may be the biggest hindrance to humanity that we need to focus on. Not that that's the answer, it's not. But that's a discarnate being, and no, I've not heard anything classified or sensitive, but I do talk to some people that are in the know, several of them. So I developed these theories and things, and no, they can't acknowledge certain things back when it's behind that dirty door that they call it. But I pay attention. So I know most of you don't have a clue who I am. You probably won't leave in here, but everything I'm saying is verifiable. In essence, my speculations are different, but they're weighted opinions. I can't say for sure anything's going to happen in 20 I don't know. Some people that are in senior positions say that no, nothing's going to happen, but other ones are like, not so sure. I'm stocking up. So, who knows? It's kind of a joker's wild of what we're encountering and what can be. But the essence of this seems that within the next 10 to 15 years, something major is going to take place on our planet, whether it's a impactor event, a CME event, or contact overtly, or all the above. We don't know, but across the board, there's a lot of kinetic anxiety. And when you get Schumer coming out with that amendment, that wasn't wrote in a vacuum. That wasn't just cool stories from staffers that talked to the cast at Skinwalker. They vetted that, just like David Grush's whistleblower complaints. They didn't take it to Congress with his claims of having a reverse engineering program and that our government has craft and bodies and all that. They didn't just take people's word on that. Wink, wink, nod, nod. I think this last DOSPER clearance of Grush's with his attorney, I think he stated that he has seen some kind of firsthand evidence himself now. So just saying that he's heard rumors and it's a telephone game, no. He had I think Title 10, Title 50, and if I'm not mistaken, he might have had Title 18, which allowed him to question DOE personnel too. So having access to 2,000 SAPs, he did his due diligence. They did not just take a few people's word for it, and trust me, bro, that is completely false. They vetted these people. They even had subpoena powers and the ability to take them into a skip room and interrogate them if they needed to, because they had, it's a military, and you have rank. You can order them in there to, go sit in the big chair and let's have a talk, because we need to know what you're doing, and you don't have a choice. You can tell us or you can go to jail. So to think that David just heard some cool rumors and such in lieu, and that they were gaslit, that's absurd. Our Congress did not write the Schumer Amendment in a vacuum off cool stories that they read after, watching Skinwalker episodes on loop for, 2 weeks. That's not how it's done. They had to have found credible evidence and testimony to substantiate what they're saying. Kind of like Mario Woods that I've gotten to know. They called him for an interview from Arrow to see what his experience was. And he told me that he talked to him for 4 hours on the phone. They didn't take any notes. They didn't record it. The guy said he would get him the notes back to him, but he's like, well, how many pages have you got written now? And the guy wouldn't answer. He says, yeah, just what I thought. You're not writing anything down. And 2 weeks after that, Kirkpatrick comes out and says there's no evidence of contact of extraterrestrial life. Yeah, you got to watch their weasel words. When they say there's no evidence of extraterrestrial life, that means from wherever to here. That may be factually correct. They don't have any evidence of that. Most of it is within our atmosphere of the sun or the Earth and Moon system. So they may not have any evidence that they're not from around here. But they didn't say that there's no evidence. And they said that in the last report, it was that they addressed the sightings, that there were the UFO sightings to date didn't reveal any extraterrestrial life. Well, that's just the sightings. They didn't talk about sensor data. They didn't talk about material evidence, nothing. They just focused on witness testimony, and then they discredited that. That may be factually correct, but it's not complete. And this is the disinformation campaign that we're up against. Is they're using weasel words. They are systematically working with people like Green Street, where they get into social media platforms. They're taking advantage of the Title 230 and the Smith-Mundt Act that they revised in 2012 to be able to spread propaganda on U.S. soil. That wasn't ever announced. I just found that out 2 weeks ago, and I've been researching this on that specific topic off and on for 2 years on the Smith-Mundt Act and that other program that stopped in 2010. So our government's not doing us a solid on it, but they're not a monolith either. Some are trying to help out with this, and some aren't. They've got family and friends just like you guys, and like with Mario being abducted and things. With having friends in Congress, of course they're going to look into it and do inquiries. There was one that was the head of the CIA. I can't remember his name right now. He had a friend that was on a commercial airliner that got paused in the sky 30,000 feet. Call bullshit if you want, but this comes from our senior CIA leader, and that was one of our senior cabinet members from Congress at the time. Just stops it in midair. I mean, that is not anything that you can explain with mylar balloons and weather inversions and all that. It's just preposterous. And another artifact, the flyover on the White House in 1952, they took pictures of plates from the observatories where they had eight, I think it's 3 or 8 artifacts that look like suns that didn't show up on the next succession of plates and never showed up again. So what they figured out is those were transient artifacts that were at least in our solar system, but it was on the same night as the flyovers of the White House. So they've got sensor data, and these are in public purview. These are accessible, the plates of this. They're pretty famous right now, and I think Diana Pasalka touches on them too. But see, this is evidence that is discoverable for all of us. It's not hidden, and we don't need an NDA, and we don't need clearance to see it. It's there. There's significant amounts that are there, but they keep coming back, and each time something gains prominence, they come in and try and counter it. So it makes you second guess what you're learning, and we're not getting anywhere. Not anywhere fast. And I don't know if anything's going to happen in 2036, but I've got family that I care about. I've got my kids, I've got my grandkids, and if there's a potential for a threat, I want to know. Is it going to be a threat or is it not? And in our government, its primary function is to protect its citizens and our home soil. So its task is to find out what is it and what are their intentions. And that's their job. And they need to be doing that. And by the 75-year disinformation campaign that OSI and Doty and them were involved with, they did a huge disservice that we are trying to fight back. But that apparatus, at least in essence, is still alive and well. And that is what I've been working diligently to try and counter and educate people on. So if anybody has any questions on anything, Heather with an L-Y. My Twitter account is Rob Heatherly1. But I wasn't prepared for this today. It's kind of sudden notice, so I just... Anybody have any questions or on anything?
Yes, I'd like to talk a little bit or ask you about them living in the earth, under our oceans, in the mountains.
Yeah.
They're here with us.
Yes. And they can pass through. They've got footage of them flying into active volcanoes, through the lava, through the side of a volcano mountain. I mean, just don't even break stride. And the only way I can figure out that they're doing that is, well, it's kind of like they're superconducting. So they can keep their structural integrity intact. So like I can float my electrons like a Bose-Einstein condensate. I won't go into the physics, but basically it would allow you to walk through the wall, and your atomic structure doesn't touch that because there's so much room there. We're down to the atomic scale. It doesn't touch the other mass. It's just like two universes passing through each other.
I just want to say you're an amazing speaker. You really covered a lot.
I appreciate that. Problem is, they don't know when to shut me up, so kind of goes on and on.
Hi, I was wondering if you had heard of the Looking Glass, Project the looking glass. You know what that is?
I've heard something about it.
Yeah, and they're talking about, going back in time. And
Yeah,
now
20 and
we're
back.
Yeah, and now we're at a point where we bottleneck, and there's only one outcome to all this, and they're supposed to be scattering around to try to change that, but everybody's awakening. So do you hold any water with that, or?
I have heard rumors that there are different factions from our future fighting it out. That the Greys, that there's a lot of different type of Greys from what I hear. Some of them, like Gary Nolan says, are synthetic, beings like, biomechanical androids or something that are, built for a specific task, just like they interface with the craft. They're no more alive than the craft is, but the craft isn't really dead either. That they are symbiotic, but. There's a lot of talk recently about humans that from our future, and then the Greys that were human also, but they left gravity, but they're gone for so long that it causes, I guess, to morph into the look of the Greys, and that's what a human looks like after it's spent so much time out in the stars, without in zero gravity and such. That all that apotropes into the to what you get now with the Greys and stuff with the huge head. Because we had the Paracas too, that elongated skulls. They try to say that's all deformation, head binding, but there's some of those that were over 25 to 50% more brain volume, and it wasn't just encephalitis that caused the swelling, huh? Yeah, and there were newborns and fetuses that had elongated skulls out of the womb, so they didn't do head binding in the womb, so they showed up 12,000 years ago in the records in Syria in some of the megalithic ruins there, the earliest ones that we found that were able to date back to that time frame. But they really got going at 4500 BC in the Black Sea region, and then they scattered both directions. Some went north toward Western Europe, and the other ones went south into South America to Paracas. And that was probably their last stand. There was a mass grave there from like 2080 or something, about 26 or 30 of them that were killed and buried in a pit when they got invaded from the north by the Aztecs. So they think that they're always depicted as the priest classes and the ruling classes. And what I found interesting is they're always wearing headgear and stuff. And I thought, for the longest time, maybe they're hiding, that they're hiding their heads or something. But I was looking at doing some more research on, remote viewing and things like that, where Ingo Swann was able to affect that sensor in that college that was supposed to be a neutrino sensor. This is just some wild speculation on my part right now, but as much as I've learned about ancient history, it would almost seem that they were covering up their heads so they had the ability to be private, and that we all, at some point, were able to communicate that way. And that was taken away from us at some point, because there's been at least 5 different species of modern humans in the last 200, 300,000 years. We're the last of them. So, at least that we know of.
You had talked about, the 4 or 5 different types of grain, and they're completely unrelated?
Well, they know. David stated that there are 5 different species that the U.S. has that they've recovered. And on the Greys, there was a lot of speculation from a lot of them. And this isn't just through Lou and a few guys from Skinwalker and things. This is from different groups altogether that don't even know them, that I help research with and things. And I read extensively. I've got a very large library now that I get a lot of books for me to reference, so I can put all this together. But it would seem that there are many different type of Greys out there. Some are androids, some are organic beings, like the ones in Varginha, Brazil. That those weren't, those had feelings. They showed emotions and stuff. Unlike the ones like with Mario Woods, that they were completely cold and clinical. The larger in the back that he said looked like an insectoid of some sort. The other 2 were Greys, but the third one was different, and it was the one that was telepathically communicating with him and things, and told him that he wasn't going to hurt him. He was hypnotically regressed, and that's where he learned that he was put in a tank with like a Jello fluid and stuff, and that they were raising his arm up, and he was telling the being that was hurting, because where they were putting his arm was really not comfortable, and it was telling he wasn't going to hurt him and things, and didn't mean to, and such, but very clinical. And like Jacobelli says, do they really need to do that to get our biologicals? Because that's just kind of absurd. If they know how to, if they can manipulate time, space, and be able to control the quantum field, it shouldn't be any problem for them to get DNA from the sewer plant or whatever remotely, from your cat, off your vacuum bag. Like Valet says, it's kabuki theater. They're wanting to change the zeitgeist, the perception of humanity, because if you look at the thermostat, the United States has gone from 75% Judeo-Christian to about 65% in about a little over a decade. So we're kind of going down and getting decentralized on a core belief structure. And this is kind of what Jacques brought out, is that every civilization seems to go through these periods that when they are focused, say like with scientism at the end of the last century and, two last centuries ago, and in the UK and Northwest Europe, they delved into Darwinism, scientism, and that was their religion. They shed off the traditional religions and they believed in their science, and that became their dogma. But that took up a significant portion of the population doing that. So when they get decentralized and they don't have a belief structure in their core, it seems like what Jacques Vallée is indicating, they'll turn up the thermostat or they'll turn it down to get the civilization focused on something, whatever sticks. Sometimes they don't know. And it doesn't discount religion. They are not mutually exclusive from each other because, from the way I understand it, like what some people call source, it's outside of our environment, of our universe, of our perceptions, that is beyond that and outside of it, that is separate, and that we're all made basically of vibrations, that there is no real solid mass, that we're artifacts and emergences in the field. So you can't discount that there could be, a God that created all that, and that if you understand free will and everything in its proper station, when everything stays where it's supposed to in a biome and things, then things get along and there's equilibrium. But when things get out of order and get out of their proper station, then havoc happens, and then it has to be adjusted until you get an equilibrium again. What it kind of looks like is that we're moving away from traditional belief structures, and the system seems to want to be giving us something else to believe in with right now it's aliens and such. In the Middle Ages it was cryptids and the Fae people and all that. It's evolving as we are. So, but it seems like it's trying to keep our interest in something, but that's separate from other humans and other beings that have their own agendas. So it's very dynamic, and it's not any one certain thing. So it's not that simple. I wish it were, but you can ask anybody. The more you delve into this and start finding facts, there's no stopping point. But you have to be able to discern what's fact and fiction, and who you can trust for accurate information and who you can't. And that has been on my journey with ancient history and this, trying to vet out what are accurate sources is paramount of who you can trust. And not any one person has all the answers. I mean, you get people, within Saul Foundation and listen to their lectures, and some of them are diametrically opposite of each other. But that's the best they know, but they have good intentions with it. See, that's what matters, is their intentions are good. They are advancing as they understand it from their discipline, and that's what we need, is that intellectual honesty.
Well, the reason I brought up about the grain is because I'm being in the medical. Okay, the
grain.
reason I brought up about the grain.
I thought you said grains. I can't hear that over
didn't know
here.
where it came from, right? The grains, but it being in the medical field, we have Rh positive blood and Rh negative blood. Rh negative is about 15%, and they just sweep it under the rug like, it doesn't mean anything. However, we have to take a shot to not kill the fetus within us. So have you looked into any of that, or are we hybrids?
The Paracus, they think, is a subspecies of humans, and that there was some Rh factor that came out of that, but also with the tall, trust me, 3 years ago, I thought all this was just most of it was not valid information. Like with the tall whites, they are us. We've been around a very long time. When you have a NASA scientist that wrote a paper in 2015 that the chemical signatures on Mars, there's no other way to explain how it died. This is a peer-reviewed paper. This is not some ad hoc guy on the internet that just made this up one night. This is a NASA scientist in his official capacity that wrote a paper that Mars was hit with 2 nuclear warheads that were the size of the Empire State Building and hit in 2 specific places on the planet that knocked out its magnetic field and killed the planet and took out its atmosphere about 250 million years ago. The chemical signatures on it are nuclear, and there's no natural explanation for it. He said that the TNT equivalencies, if it was a nuclear warhead, would be the size and the diameter roughly of the Empire State Building. The second one was a little smaller, but that paper's out there and available. It's public. But there's no natural process that they know of that you can get those kind of nuclear signatures on the planet. Can't be done. So, they're not credulous. They were trying to find solutions, and that's all they can come up with.
Hi. Directly related to the initial topic you brought up in terms of things like the Guerilla Skeptics and the instances from UAPX and UFO Twitter. That's definitely a very real thing. I have an incredible case in point for that. So I might, I'm going to simply brief the topic and hopefully not split hairs on stuff, but anyone who's been looking at the recent and then some of the older footage of UAP, you see a whole lot of these little seemingly metallic spheres, usually in 3 points. Usually in about 3 points. They're kind of floating around. They've been pictured from the Foo Fighters on, but there's tons and tons of them seemingly now.
Yeah.
There's a notorious video series that's been going around on UFO Twitter. I'm sure you've seen it, related to the disappearance of Malaysian Airlines flight MH370X.
Yeah, I've seen that.
So, allegedly these videos depict some of these orbs going around the plane, and it disappears, essentially teleports potentially from our reality, allegedly filmed by an NROL-22, and then also a satellite system. So, I don't know jury-wise on that. So I guess my question is, and then where the evidence I'm seeing on this is, the guy who's posted that, his name is Ashton Forbes. He's done an incredible symposium on it. But, here's a case in point where someone is asking all of UFO Twitter, hey, if you have any information about this guy, if you know of any illicit activities he's done, he's slandering the U.S. government, abusing FOIA, being mean to Boeing and Lockheed and stuff like that. And the first thing that he does after calling him a grifter is tag Mick West in this post. So I've since tagged you in this post if you wanted to kind of get some info. But sure. I was just curious if you have any understanding or knowledge of things about that type of tech, about that type of video, and or how these targeted campaigns seem to attack specific personalities on Twitter.
Anybody that starts gaming any kind of influence to, say like with the MH370 with Ashton, whether it's true or not, he's influencing a lot of people that are getting convinced by his narrative that the phenomenon is real. Well, it doesn't matter if his information is true or false to the skeptic groups and all them, and the government and the DOD. They don't want getting traction in the human awareness of us civilians that the phenomenon is real. So we have government and intelligence assets that are trying to muddy the waters on that and discredit any forward momentum. And then we have groups like Wikipedia with our Guerilla Skeptics, and CSI fellows that include Mick West and Neil deGrasse Tyson. Thank you very much. They are all working to systematically reduce any forward momentum. So the technologies that they exhibited in the 370, I would say, I can't speak to that one, but the technologies exist that is possible. It's entirely possible to do something of that nature. Now, as to whether that occurred with this, who's to say? There's too much much disinformation out there and counter information. So you have to look at the essence of things, and you can't. I'm notorious for this too. You can't get cut off from the main thrust of the formation. Say like you're marching to battle and things. You got your column. You can't get caught up in these side skirmishes that'll take you away from the core essence of what it is you're trying to figure out, because you'll get stuck in that rabbit hole the rest of your life if you're not careful. And that's what I think part of what Jacques Vallée outlines as the systems and systems is it keeps people occupied with their time. And I'm not saying that, for me, I'm a Christian, and I believe that in free will, that God created all that we're encountering. But if they have free will, they can choose to leave their proper station. And that's echoed in the Book of Enoch. It's in the Sumerian text. It's in the Vedics. It's in the Aztec, the codices and stuff. That is echoed through every known myth and religion we have. So you can't say, oh, aliens and then God doesn't exist. It's just not that simple. They're not mutually exclusive. So if you understand free will and you apply it to other beings, it looks like kind of like what the Israeli senior defense minister and the one from Canada, where they talked about that we're in a galactic federation of sorts. Yeah, that there's rules of engagement in place, which is, for all practical purposes, what we're looking at. Because power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. We don't see a monopoly taking place here. If there were just one them, and they didn't like our nukes and stuff, what's keeping them from just coming out and taking over? Because they've done, in ancient history, that's happened multiple times. You get these isolates and stuff, and these new civilizations that pop up out of nowhere. It happens. So, are we going to get another visit? Is this on something on a time scale of, like Randall Carlson talks about and Graham Hancock, that every 25,000 years of the precessional cycles, that it puts us in alignment and in proximity maybe with another planet where it makes the distances more easily bridged, or if two suns get close enough and it increases the availability of electromagnetic and solar energy to make things like that much more traversable, and say like building the megaliths and stuff. It may be cycles that they're able to do that when certain stars are aligned or something, literally, where they are able to have that window to build things. And when that window's gone, then they leave again. Because like they talk about the Golden Age, Silver Age, and the Bronze Age and Iron Age, it goes through the cycles. And the Iron Age sucks to be them for 5,000 years, struggling and running from, saber-toothed tigers and crap. When they come back around to the next cycle, then, they're going to have a Golden Age again. And it's like with if you look at a lot of the pillars and things in the temples in India, if you've ever rebuilt starters and generators and all that, you recognize that some of those are rotors. They have like contact points on them and stuff. That if they were machinery, you're looking at a giant mechanism that you could put back together. And did they transmute the metal into stone to leave it there to hide it in plain sight? And a lot of the stealing patterns are specific frequencies that are, when you apply a certain frequency, they make a certain pattern for every certain frequency. So some of those are frequencies that you're looking at. And like Göbekli Tepe, Pillar 43, Enclosure D, it has two standing wave resonances built into it. It's like 90 hertz and 120 hertz. That when you hit it with that frequency, it'll vibrate and give you a standing wave that'll resonate back through you. And they found, there's scientific studies and papers out now. They've tested over 30 sites around Europe, and let's see, there was a Sagmatar that's pretty rare. Most people don't know about that, but it's got a wall that has standing wave properties. And in Malta, the Serapeum that's underneath it, that I can't remember the name of it right now, but those are tuned to specific frequencies. And what one does is it relaxes the left side of the brain, and the other one amplifies the right side. So if we were, basically we wouldn't have to use DMT to take a trip and hone in, because those frequencies would dial down and let us see with our right mind and not be hindered by it. But something has broken that process, it seems like, in the last 5,000 years or so where we can't tap in. But the Paracas with the elongated skulls appear that they could. And maybe the hats they wear were blocking it so they didn't have to share their thoughts. They had a luxury of privacy. That's just speculation, but it kind of adds up when you start looking at the big picture of all this. That there's a lot in our history that has been denied us, and the Vatican and the Smithsonian and them, they know what the hell's going on, and they don't think that we are capable of knowing the truth. And there are people that have worked in some of these UFO programs that some are, it varies. Some are concerned. Some don't think we need to know it all, and some think that we just need told that the phenomenon exists and it's real. Now go about your day. We aren't going to tell you anything else. And then you get on the other end of the spectrum, David and them. No, we need to go full Monty here. And like Lou says, open kimono. So just let her rip. And there's a reason that's driving this, and I don't. They can't tell me because it's classified. But when you're around enough of these people like Jim Simovan and all them, they have a sense of urgency that seems to be building with this, and I don't know exactly what it is, but even can't remember his name right now. Basically, Richard Dolan, they seem to have an anxiety as this 2036 keeps floating around. That really, it keeps me awake at night too, worrying about that, because some says, "Oh, don't worry about it. That's just, it's just rumors," and don't know it's going to come to pass, like Nostradamus and such, don't worry about it, which they may be telling me that, so I don't worry between now and then, and I appreciate that, but I'd rather know the truth. Like Lou says, if you've got cancer, you don't want to hide it and then just drop over dead one day and not even realize you did. There could be choices in there somewhere that need to be made. So I think it just feels like there's a growing sense of urgency that humanity needs to know we're not alone, and I think part of the phenomenon doesn't want us to know, so we are caught with our pants down. And that would be a bad day for humanity. So, like Lud said, are we risking speeding up a process that might have been 50 years out, and now we're going to crank it up to 5 years? We don't know. But at the rate we're going, it looks like, we're going to be pushed into war, conventionally soon if we're not careful. But are they going to intervene? It appears that they're not going to. They don't care we wipe ourselves off the planet, but don't take the rest of the biosphere with us. It seems like, and I have no knowledge of this concretely, but it seems like that they want to mitigate the nukes, whether it's going to be a natural event or not natural event. Something seems to be coming that they are preparing for as well. Either a takeover of the planet because they're advanced scouting it, or they're going to protect it, or both. We don't know. So it's Joker's wild, but we have to have accurate information to make any informed decisions, period, on anything. And that's my premise, is that with all these special interest groups and Wikipedia and the Guerilla Skeptics, we're not getting it. We need a different source of information, because most people don't know this was taking place. So we've got a veneer lacquered over the reality that we have blinders on, and that infuriated me when I figured that out.
I just wondered what you thought about that, because they took more effort burying it than they did creating it.
Yeah, there was Martin Sweatman that wrote Was the Fox Say, 2017, a paper of archaeoastronomy, where he showed that out of the shoulder of Taurus, the Pleiades, the seven sisters that come out of the shoulder of the bull, it seems like each observatory there was on a professional, was on a one of the degrees that they each 2,000 years they buried one and they go to the next one, and that each observatory is still trained to a certain spot in the sky for that. They think it was the one that was on Pillar 43 memorialized the Younger Dryas impact. That the stellarium shows that that we were lined up with the shoulder of bull and everything, and they think that at the 12,800 impact, what was a comet, and it could have been what's his name? Argues for a CME, Robert Schoch. He's trying to say at 11,600 to 1,200 years later, that event could have been an oceanic impact, because there was no traces of impact craters on the land like there was with the first one. The Younger Dryas Impact Hypothesis Group, a comet research group, they've verified that there's a crater underneath Greenland, and they think that the North Pole was the Hudson Bay at the time. But Robert Schoch says it was a CME at 11,600, but when a comet goes around the sun, it elicits a huge CME reaction out of it. It outgasses and sends out high energy particulates. So it could have been perihelion, kicked up the sun to hit us with a big CME and an impact into the ocean. So I think it was both, and that's kind of what Randall Carlson's thought processes are with that.
Do you think they knew it was coming?
Yeah. The Chinese have the oldest recorded map of the sky, and they make you think it's just one paper, one little bitty section on Wikipedia. No, it was a giant wall-sized. They had the whole sky mapped out in the southern hemisphere that they could see, all of it, and including Antarctica. So they are hiding a lot of information out there, and it takes a lot of effort to know who to trust on which categories, because no one person is an expert on any of this. You got to have a collective team to know how to trust, and then collectively, each person has their skill sets to pursue what the facts are and be able to sort the wheat from the chaff. So we haven't, because the best indication of what's going to happen is knowing what did happen in the past. And for people that don't want to buy into any theology, that's fine. But the echoes of what's in there, even if you take out the religious aspects of it, if you look at the essence of what took place, it fits. Because the wars among the gods and it appears the megalithic construction stopped at about 3200 BC when there was an impact for the Berkel crater and took off the top of the mountain in Kopels, Austria, the flood of Noah. And the water come up out of the well springs of the deep for that flood. But the Younger Dryas, it was like 1,000-foot tidal waves. This one seemed to be a deluge that just rained for extended periods and deluged most everything. Because there's myths of Native Americans even that were on like Mount Shasta and saw boats floating by, that survived the flood. So, it was global rain out, and just like with some of the maps they had in Nazca. But they've got the largest pyramid on Earth. It's buried down there under 25 feet of mud in Mexico City. Cholula, I think or what it is, or something like that. It's the biggest one on Earth, and there are like 2,000 pyramids in the Amazon basin that completely eclipsed. It seems like they tried to kickstart again in Egypt, but the main thrust of habitation was in South and Central America, because they had over 20 million there at one point from all the LiDAR that they've done, the scans. They had a soil that was bioengineered. There was a super soil, and it's still there. It grows. It's a very high potency soil, but it wasn't natural. The Amazon basin was constructed. It was engineered for maximum yield. So
You're blowing me completely away, dude. Okay. I want to ask you about this. Are you doing studies on abductees?
yeah. You what? Am I doing studies?
Yeah, I want in the study.
Well, we've got a team for that too. We kind of have, this has been a big distraction for me with the Wikipedia thing and from my normal research and investigations, but it's a necessary one, because if this doesn't get addressed, it doesn't matter what else I research and what I find out and what any of you find out and try to advance. We're facing a very well-coordinated giant of disinformation. And if we can't turn it around, we're going to be caught completely unprepared for whatever's coming. So, I hope, my hope is, and this what keeps me, from just completely losing my mind and things, you have to have hope. And that's one of the major issues that I see with this organization of the Guerilla Skeptics. They are a nihilist, materialist group. They don't believe anything exists outside the material world. When you're dead, you're just worm dirt. That's it. You're done. And yes, they have workshops even how to overcome religion. So you can get away from it. So you can believe in absolutely nothing. There's no hope. There's no reason to be alive. That's the good message they're spreading. So I have a problem with that. I kind of like to have hope and faith that keeps people motivated to get up in the mornings. And a reason to live. They're trying to take all that away. That all is not. There's no. We're just a spark of lightning. That brought us out of the primordial goo, and we're going to go right back to it. And there's no afterlife. So that's their message. Pretty bleak. And I don't like them hurting other people because innocent people suffer because of what they're advancing intentionally. And when there was one incident where they intentionally tried to strip a priest of his faith. Mick West did that, trying to convince him God didn't exist. That's sadistic. So, yeah, I have an axe to grind, but, it's for the collective whole because I don't like innocent people suffering, and I see them doing a huge disservice to humanity.
I want to know if aliens are amongst us, and I'm sure they are. Are they in danger?
Are the aliens in danger?
The ones that are here with us, are they in danger? May I ask that?
Are they a danger to our government?
No.
Or
Are they
from our
in
government?
danger from our government as far as...
Well, you can see some of the different footages around the planet, like in Peru and all that, where it looks like, you can see a craft going into the clouds, and all of a sudden it looks like a high-energy weapon bullet out of the sky. Something's at war with them. Is it us? We had that incident in Vegas, but in South America and third world countries, there seems to be a lot of activity going on. It seems like we're at war with them.
I'm assuming that you're talking about people walking around like in this room,
Yes, I am.
not flying around, but people who are walking among us is what she's referring to.
Yeah, the government wants to get different factions. The government want different things, but those that have the crash retrieval program, they don't want the news out there. They've killed people to protect the program, and it's sanctioned through the U.S. government because there's a clause in there that they can do that. And well, that's what they're looking into. That Congress is looking into to get oversight because there's special programs that the White House could. There's a specific clause that they can enact that they have a SAP program, and that they would only have to inform 2 people on the Gang of 8 or something like that. So technically, this unauthorized SAP program, it could have some kind of oversight from the White House, and they wouldn't have to tell us about it under certain guidelines. And that's just, I haven't been given anything that is sensitive or anything. It's just I do my due diligence on looking at the laws and how this unauthorized SAP could exist with oversight, but most of Congress not knowing about it like they normally should. But then you have DOE clauses that have a different security hierarchy there as well. So they could theoretically, they could hide a program like that. And I guess what they're trying to figure out is the program hidden, and that there are factions in our government that are aware of it, like a couple on the Gang of 8 or somebody. Each White House gets cycled through. So you would almost have to have like a Majestic 12 that hands on the baton to the next generation, but they're institutionalized. They're going to be there for long suffering. So you wouldn't have administrations necessarily that would know. I think like with Eisenhower and stuff, if they made treaties and things in the past and we're in contact, who's to say which presidents were briefed in and which ones weren't? We don't know, but it seems like we have our acknowledged government, but then there's one running in the background that seems to be doing whatever the hell they want, and our normal constitution, everything exists at their leisure. That scares me, because you can see the Air Force just starkly balking at Congress when they're trying to get them to come forward. And just like when you have Rubio was able to fire up the UAP task force in 2019 and get a reporting mechanism put in place, they were able to take reports from the Navy pilots, and by rules they were supposed to be able to get a mechanism for the Air Force pilots to report as well. But there was still a stigma through the Air Force. They did not allow their pilots to report. They put the mechanism in place, but then they told them you're not going to see anything, basically. So they had training missions where Navy pilots were right alongside the Air Force pilots, same aircraft, same radar systems, and the Navy guy paints it and sees it, and the Air Force guy denies that they saw anything. And that's the problem we're having is that the Navy seems to want to be playing ball, but the Air Force and the DOE and whatever else is out there, they're not. They don't. They're not playing by our rules. So how do you bring them to heel? And that's where the Schumer Amendment comes in, is that they know where the rogue essence of them are, and that's the way to bring them back in to constitutionally solvent. Because right now, like with Herrera, if that's to be true with the 2004, where he was in the Philippines, and after the flood that they had down there, where him and I think 2 other guys crested the hill, and they came across this giant round disc craft that was there with Americans basically in black camis and stuff that were hauling big giant containers. At the time, he didn't know what they were. He thought maybe drugs or something. They surrounded the guys in tactical formation, took their guns away. They thought they were going to kill them. They told them they were, but they're lucky they didn't. For some reason, that there was something that caused them to hesitate. They didn't kill them. They were lucky they got away. But these were Americans in a craft. I mean, if you're going to believe that, and he seems extremely credible in his testimony, and it doesn't waver. So I have a tendency to believe him of what he saw, and it's very disturbing that they're loading these giant containers and deuce and halves on these platforms that can be drawn up into the craft and then bolt away, with the blink of an eye. That he found out later that they're hauling, humans in those containers, human smuggling and things. That even it gets even wilder that they think that there are people that have psychic abilities that are able to operate the craft, and they're using them against their will as pilots. So as absurd as that sounds, that's the zeitgeist out there of what it appears that we're being shown. And this could completely be kabuki theater, like Jacques Vallée says, and just to form us to have a certain perception and to keep us, occupied with busy work. So we don't know what's real, but, we know when we bleed and we feel pain. That's real enough. So it may be an illusion, but it's still our reality. We're still going to feel it, and it's real to us. Whether you want to call it an illusion, a hologram, it doesn't matter. It's our reality. It doesn't matter what label you put on it. And I want to know what that reality consists of, and if it's going to change, I want to know why and if there's something we can do about it. And not be denied information to make an informed decision. So that is the crux of this Wikipedia. We are not being allowed to make informed decisions. That is being taken away, and we need to understand that and find our information elsewhere, because it isn't coming from there. And the PSYOPs and the Pentagon is alive and well. So they're doing everything they can to keep this national inquiry level. So it seems like what they're talking about with catastrophic disclosure. We could have Russia or China come out with declaring, hey, we've got, and then they would control the narrative. If they roll out a craft and bodies or something, then they would get all the headlines, they would get all the attention. That would be a little bit difficult to circumvent, but then we don't know what kind of treaties were made with our nation, with theirs. We just don't know. But like with World War II, with Nazis, it seemed like they were being helped, but they had to do it on the down low because evidently they lost. If they were a monopoly and they were others, then they could have taken over the planet. What would stop them? That tells me that there's rules of engagement that they were going by, and they were helping out on the sly, kind of like we get craft dropped in the desert that are perfectly intact. There seems to be zones and regions of the planet that different factions may have control over, that we're in proxy war. So it's very complex out there.
All right, everybody, please join me in giving Rob a hand.
Thank you.